series. Very difficult, unless you watch the Spanish LVP, very difficult to really get to grips with how good they compare on a level of this scale, especially against the likes of Woolite and AOD.
We've got some more data points for you here. Scoundrel pick and Ban starts us up. Wind and Rain are going to start on the blue side. Origen will take the red. Kassadin banned out straight away by Wind and Rain.
Scarlet, yeah, so Scarlet Red Hand's really good Kassadin that's been banned against him consistently. Seven Army gets his Nidalee banned. So we actually were wondering what where Seven Army came from. EUNE, and we went to his Facebook page. The first picture we saw was Nidalee on his player screen, Challenger. I mean, this guy, obviously a big Nidalee player.
Absolutely. I spoke to some of the Wind and Rain guys as well about it just before, and they asked about it, and they said, you know, they're not that worried about him as a player because he's kind of untested, but his Nidalee is something they are aware of. So.
Well, I think, you know, we've seen Mike Young rise through the ranks as the Nidalee main.
Don't call me Mike Young.
I think he doesn't mind being called Mike Young, considering that's his name. So,
yeah,
we will see the Caitlyn banned out from Origen, and Jax taken away from Dan by Origen here as well.
Yeah.
No, sorry, by Wind and Rain.
Draw a lot of target bans against this Origen roster. Now with the Nidalee in there, the Kassadin. This is a whole first ban series of target bans by Wind and Rain.
What do you think we're going to see from Wind and Rain here, though?
Thresh first pick.
I mean, Elise is open as
Thresh,
well.
Elise is both very viable. One thing that sort of, I mean, yeah, so Thresh gets locked in. One thing I did want to mention as well, that on this patch, Nunu has been buffed, as long as Cinderhulk. And I think it's something that would complement Wind and Rain's playstyle massively. It neutralizes the early game and then gets you to late game and then essentially reinforces the hyper carry.
Dan has done really well on Nunu as well. It's been a pick that he's really functioned quite happily on. So I think if Dan gets his hand on Nunu, you do scale up easily. It kind of what did you call Nunu? He like stops the early game almost. He like alleviates the early game.
Yeah, he just you know neutralizes it.
That's the word I was looking for. He neutralizes the early game, and then you get to the late game where he becomes very utility focused, good utility jungler.
It's not very fun to play him into Elise though.
No.
Not at all. Because not only can she kill you at almost all stages, well, I mean early game, but then she can deny you with this sort of straight up stun, and even in like duels she can just pop the ult by repelling. So.
Well, we will see the Elise and the Braum locked in for Origen. Going to be a Twitch for Wind and Rain, giving Woolite a hyper carry, and perhaps going to see their jungler picked here as well if they don't want to get to that second set of bans.
Generally, like we said, the first rotation of picks tends to be jungle and bot lane. There we go. This is a Twitch composition coming through here. Woolite on Twitch, combining with Dan on Nunu. I mean, that is a lot of synergy that we have seen come out before.
This is his moment, Woolite's moment to prove me right here, because if he can't do it with Thresh and Nunu on his team, he can't do it at all. I guess into Braum and Elise it's pretty tough to play any AD carry just because of the sort of gank potential they have, and then Braum can shield for the Twitch ult, but still.
Wow, look at this. This is a prioritization of Cassiopeia. Again, A takes it away from Larssen. I think all of us here know how good Larssen is with Cassiopeia, and they're going to give that over to Scarlet as a priority, which means now AD carries might be the ban targets for Wind and Rain.
Yeah, it's a possibility. You probably want to look towards top as well, because you want to get rid of that Fiora, and Dan still has the Kennen. If he wants to go split push Kennen.
That's my name. You might want to get rid of Jarvan. You might want to get rid of Jarvan as well, potentially. I think he's a pretty good pick into the Twitch.
You could even try and just take away the 2 engage AD carries. I mean, we've seen the Ashe as well, if that's what you're really concerned about. But considering that Kalista and Varus can both put a lot of pressure onto the Twitch between the two, maybe you just don't ban one of them, and you look to maybe ban away the split push, because that is something that your comp's going to struggle with already.
I like getting rid of the Ashe because it is that definitive engage utility AD carry. Again, you throwing up whether you think... I think Kalista Braum is a good ban here. Kalista Varus I would be less worried about.
Yeah.
So that might be a way that you look at the next ban here for Wind and Rain, because it limits that really heavy presence 2v2 lane by getting rid of the Kalista. But again, you leave open something like Fiora for Dan specifically, and we know how much Dan likes to split push.
But what's Larssen going to play into this Cassiopeia now here as well? It's going to be the Varus ban, so it is another engage AD carry that we're talking about. Does have the Kalista in his back pocket if he wants it. Neon, I believe, played Jhin as well in that first week, who's semi-engaged, still a utility ultimate from the AD carry. I don't like the Kog'Maw pick. It's going to be Kog'Maw. Cool.
It's interesting because often you like to pick Kog'Maw into a situation where you can give him plenty of protection. And the way that this is phrased up now for OG is that if you want to give Kog'Maw the protection necessary, Dan might not be on a champion that offers the level of split push pressure that we are used to Dan having. But the way that Origen have drafted is the way that Origen has always drafted, the way we saw Wind and Rain draft in the European Challenger qualifiers. Dan is the priority in terms of last pick, and that's the way it has been for this roster pretty much all the time.
Yeah, and then the lock-in here for the Corki for Larssen is actually something we see in quite a lot of competitive games where you run Nunu, because Nunu can not only buff the Twitch, but if Twitch isn't around, you can buff the Corki. Yeah. He provides disengage. You have a double carry comp. Fits very nicely all around.
Looks like we could potentially see some shenanigans.
Is it really shenanigans? JWoww playing a tanky top laner is something we've seen.
Shen is up, and Shen has been a high priority top laner for a little while now.
Especially with the Twitch and with the Corki.
And JWoww specifically. Yeah. I mean, JWoww's played a lot of Shen throughout this tournament, so it's something that's pretty easy for him. But Fiora open, like, I mean, are you asking to have Fiora picked here? I don't know.
Dandan's, he's kind of more a split pusher who doesn't play Fiora. I know that sounds really odd.
Gangplank is a good pick as well.
Gangplank, Kennen, Gnar, that sort of suits him a little bit more, so it's going to be the Gangplank into that Shen top lane.
So, I mean, this is a only with Braum, really, to protect the Kog'Maw. This is maybe this is a composition that has so many threats from so many angles that maybe Kog'Maw doesn't become the primary focus.
Yeah, that's precisely what their comp's going to try and do. You know, you have double carry in the backline, GP running right essentially with his ult, and then the sort of burst that GP can put out, and then Elise and Braum are basically going to like jump forward and just try and sort of
it's like if you don't focus Kog'Maw, you focus Cassiopeia. If you focus Kog'Maw, you don't focus Cassiopeia, and there's a lot of... But you've got a team-wide devastating composition from Wind and Rain if they get the setup.
Yeah, and Origin's composition is so hard to actually pull off.
Yes.
You know, you're relying on all of your CC landing essentially, and Braum being in the perfect place to keep the Kog'Maw alive.
I mean, what you've got here from Origin is you've got individual positioning matters so much, individual skill and timing matters so much. So many small pieces of this machine have to fit together to make their team fight functional. You do always have the split push Gangplank, which can go on forever, right? That's a very easy strategy to enact, and then you just clear waves. But to actually function on a team fight level, everything kind of has to line up for Origin. Whereas with literally with Wind and Rain, you can go Twitch, use ultimate. Like,
that is exactly it.
So, quickly before we get into the game, predictions, guys. What do we think? Starting with you, Scoundrel.
I actually feel like I'm going to have to go for Wind and Rain, despite the fact that I know Origin have got this new bot lane coming in, which I think will boost their performance. I think Wind and Rain have got the composition I prefer.
Frozen Dawn?
I'm the same here.
See, I want to say Origin because last time I was right when I disagreed with you both, but I think Wind and Rain are going to take it. So it's a clean sweep for them. They get 3 of a kind, with all of us thinking Wind and Rain will take the win. I'm just worried for Origin both as a team and as an organization at the moment, because they've kind of at the moment you're looking at Giants and you're saying we got demoted from LCS with these guys. How come they're sitting top? They're sitting 5-0, 4-0. And we're sitting here with only 1 win to our name.
It must be so hard for the Origin organization to say, we came from Challenger Series, we made it to Worlds in the same year, and now they are potentially facing the barrel where they might be an EU CSQ team of the likes of Origin. That is prestige of the organization just down the drain almost.
And that it is. We're on to the Summoner's Rift for a 3rd game of the day, 2nd series. And Origin will face up against Wind and Rain. Let's talk a little bit about win conditions for these two teams at Scoundrel. We said in picks and bans, OG need to keep that Kog'Maw safe on the backline, let the Cassiopeia scale up a little bit, let Dandan split push. But how do they actually win the game? How do they close it out?
You've got a couple of win conditions from Origin. Dandan's split push will always remain a win condition for this team. It's something that he would be able to try and execute on consistently. It's something that has provided with them so many surprise wins in the past as well. And especially in a matchup which you know that Gangplank is going to essentially have free farm in. It is a very easy sort of win condition to look at for the Origin roster. The other win condition is you just get Kog'Maw and Cassiopeia to late game, and then use Braum and Elise to provide distraction and engage when you try and force fights. But eventually you're going to get to the point where the actual damage output of Origin is even too much for the likes of the War frontline to tank, because it will get to that point eventually. So Origin need a bit of time to make this competition come online. Wind and Rain, on the other hand, I mean, all you need to do is find an opportunity for Twitch to get a Blood Boil, pop his ultimate, and just go crazy. They've got a great siege as well with Corki and Twitch. Double AD makes it very easy for you to push down towers very, very quickly too.
Origin actually have the shortest game time of any team here, so it's interesting that they're going for a competition that wants to scale. A lot of those short games have been in their losses, though, bringing that average game time down quite a bit. Wind and Rain, on the other hand, 2nd longest average game time. And we've seen Twitch competitions, as much as we say, you know, they're looking just to set this up, it's not an easy thing to do. They still need to get that Twitch a couple of items underneath his belt. And a lot of our focus will be down towards this bottom side for the early game, especially on Neon and Illusionist, the substitutes coming in for this Origin lineup, looking to live up to their Week 1 performance against Paris Saint-Germain.
I think also what's important to look at here is that these are two particular facets of either team that is so important. Twitch, so important in the Wind and Rain roster. This Kog'Maw, so important to the way that Neon and the Origin roster want to function in the late game. So this is a lane that actually has a lot of importance. Both of these AD carries will scale up quite nicely.
Oh, the hook onto Illusionist. They have Ignite as well. The playback Ignite used. Heal already used by Neon as well. Unbreakable comes down. Illusionist taken out by AOD. And that is not the start you want to see if you're an Origin fan.
Way to send a message to a substitute bot lane that you are fighting against Woolite and AOD, and you should not disrespect positioning in lane. Just caught out by, I mean, look, there's not many way more ways to say. Come on, Kinnan,
not many more ways to say it than they were just caught out of position,
you literally said it for me, yeah.
Oh, mate, I formulated that entirely by myself, would you believe it?
It's, unfortunately, didn't get my words out, apparently.
Great minds think alike, Scoundrel. But First Blood going over to AOD does enhance this bottom lane. Double dagger for Woolite. He's not playing Xayah. He has, in fact, picked up 2 daggers for himself. Xayah has a skill called Double Dagger. It's another play-by-play fact for you there today, I learned.
Thanks, buddy.
I've been so educational today. It's been great.
You have. It's been colourful, I think would be the word.
Indeed. Blue with anticipation for the rest of this game. War already with that slight advantage. 8 CS down, but Woolite has been able to back already. Nunu's on his way as well. They do still have a flash on Neon, and he's going to have to use it.
Wow, I mean, so much pressure coming down in this bot lane now. And Dan can just continuously return and do this kind of thing. Like, all Nunu has to do is walk into lane, and then Thresh looks needs to set up for some sort of hook. Nunu, even if he lands an Ice Blast in the right situation, makes it so much easier for AOD to walk up and get a flay, and then follow up with a hook. Larssen just taking so much damage here against Skarlet, disrespecting that Cassiopeia damage output. Larssen's going to be forced back to base as the wave shoves towards him.
That's just the thing that Cassiopeia can do. We've seen time and time again it happen that if you get slightly ahead, if you get a good positioning off with Noxious Blast landing, you can just Twin Fang after Twin Fang after Twin Fang and force that Corki back. He has got Doran's shield, so if he only takes a little bit of poke, he can get that Doran's shield back up. But when the Fangs just come out time and time again, it does make it pretty difficult for you to do anything. Actually, it looks like Wind and Rain are going for a very early swap up towards the top side here. About 5 minutes, they'll be up towards that top lane. And doing this just gets them away from the freeze that's happened from Neon and Illusionist in this bottom lane.
I mean, you literally knocked the
Great
nail
minds.
on that.
Great minds think alike as well.
Knocked the nail on the head there, Sona. Neon and Illusionist had the lane in a position where they... Neon and Illusionist had the lane in the position where you could freeze it if they wanted to. And, you know, that basically meant that Woolite and AOD didn't want to function in a situation where they could potentially have to go against the freeze. And also, it does force Dan into a poor situation where he wanted to be against Shen as long as possible because he wanted to be able to just essentially farm for free, get those... I always call them doubloons, but I think they're like silver coin serpents or
Silver
something.
serpents.
Silver serpents. He wanted to get those silver serpents stacking very nicely. And now also, because of the inability for OG to react quickly, this might even just be first turret of the game. This is the ideal situation when you make this kind of rotation.
The next wave is a way away, so they will just have to back away, but I think they have enough time to get that next wave. Woolite is actually miles behind on CS because of this rotation, and he's not getting the majority of the CS as they push this forward because they're just trying to hard force. Skarlet and Seven Army are on their way up.
Wow, yeah, they're actually going to have to force themselves back as well because they didn't have vision in that mid lane. Larssen must have called that both Skarlet and Seven Army will have been missing. The vision is strong for OG in that river, moving up towards the top lane, so it was a rotation that they felt comfortable to make. And now they're actually going to counter-rotate again. Not only is this pulling Dan out of an easy matchup where he was able to farm for free, it's also making OG react to Wind and Rain. Pull Neon out of a side lane. The one worry that you do have, and you illustrated it so nicely, is the CS differences between Woolite and Neon. You do not want to keep making this rotation because Twitch will eventually miss out on CS and fall behind Kog'Maw.
So what they're doing is actually just pushing JWoww back up towards top lane. They're not keeping him here for this next push down towards bot. They're not going to get the tower off it, but it will perhaps help even out that CS discrepancy ever so slightly. Woolite's got his 3rd dagger and an Infernal Drake here. War actually playing so well around these rotations. We do have a pause coming out.
That's what I really liked also about the fact that Wind and Rain made that rotation very quickly after realizing that the first turret was not going to go down so readily. They basically move down to the bot lane. They've got the Nunu, who's got excellent neutral objective control in the early game, able to then just use that man advantage, forcing OG to react slowly, use that man advantage to take the Drake off the table very quickly, and that's an Infernal Drake. It's a really important one as well. So I think it's just some good early rotations by Wind and Rain here, because they're able to take things on the map, and OG are quite slow to react to it.
What do you think, Frozen Dawn? Is this exactly what you want to see from Wind and Rain?
So, pretty much. Essentially, they have tempo, even though they've got scaling lanes. They're able to push into the top wave, shove it out. It wasn't the perfect scenario to actually transition there because you didn't have a wave gathering for you. If you remember, as they were walking up, the wave kind of hit the tower already, so they weren't able to fully push with like a cannon wave or anything, but it was good enough.
Thank you for that insight, Frozen Dawn.
Weatherman Frozen Dawn comes in to give the one-liner.
That was a good one-liner, though.
It was a good one-liner.
Intriguing. Gold's still pretty much even between these two teams, even with that first blood happening down in the bottom lane, but an Infernal Drake for Wind and Rain. You'd expect them only really to want clouds and oceans.
Frozen Dawn was right, though. What they would have really liked to have had was a big wave stacking in that top lane that Shen had been able to slow push before this push took place. And then they might have had enough time to get that first lane tier 1.
They're running back up top. Like, Wolight's on his way back up there.
They really
counter-swap, and then they counter-swap, and then they counter-swap. Just time and time again. And Neon now has a 17 CS lead.
Almost 20. Do they really, really not want Dan to farm for free? Or are they just trying to sort of essentially get a first turret very quickly?
But all they're doing is denying CS off of Woolight. Like, all that has to happen here is Dan uses ult under the wave, under the tower, and stops this wave pushing in.
Yeah, they have got... I mean, he could do it, but I think they could be able to...
He's not going to do it.
They might be able to tank it, but they might actually just end up trading a turret regardless. And
they do get first tower blood.
And they put Twitch miles behind regardless. He's 20 CS behind at this point in time for first tower blood. It might seem worth it, but it's probably not worth it.
Especially since he didn't get that first blood as well. It means that he is...
And Twitch is a scaling AD carry. Twitch is a scaling AD carry. He wants the farm to scale up, just as Cogmore does.
And remember, they got Neon's flash pretty early on as well. They could have really denied him in that lane, but instead they said, that will give you some free farm, we'll give you a free tower. All of the gold's going to go on to Neon here as well. I love to see how far ahead he is of Woolight at the moment, just in pure gold numbers. Only 300, but he is going to just continue to scale up as this game goes on.
Woolight and AOD also had the 2v2 pressure, where Dan could just walk in and just try and find hooks every so often. To me, it feels like they have been trying to pull Dan out of free farm. That for me, either it's that they knew that they could basically force OG to be slow to react and secure first tower easily, but the grand scheme of it feels like they were trying to pull Dan out of a matchup where he could farm for free against the Shen, but realistically, he's just going to end up in that matchup eventually anyway.
And they haven't even done that.
Yeah.
He's got equal farm with JWoww. The only thing that's happened here is they got first tower, which keeps that gold pretty much even. They got an Infernal Drake, which again does help them as they scale up later on. You know, Corki works well with Infernal, as does Twitch.
So if you then go back to the drawing board and say, we got first tower, but it allowed us to remain equal, does that sound like a good strategy for taking first tower?
I'm going to say no.
Especially since they returned with the tower of their own. So, okay, there are two reasons that you take first tower of the game. To get early rotation and start a snowball, which there is the Gangplank ultimate clearing the wave, or to get that sort of net global gold advantage and try and use that to get certain spikes or whatever. All you've done here, you've not really gained any map pressure, and you've also only remained even in gold. So the strategy, while it looks fancy, didn't really work out.
It's going to be a 2v4. Larssen staying around, will package away, trying to clear the wave so they can't get that tower. Might be able to deny it for the time being, and they will get a turret in the bottom lane. So actually more gold going over to Woolight here as he gets all of that gold for himself, probably equalizing that discrepancy between the two. War have played this second rotation game just slightly better than OG, but OG continue to push in the top lane.
Yeah, and actually you are seeing Larssen come up to the top lane because it's necessary for the wave clear. Shen with Tiamat is not going to be able to clear these waves quickly enough, and what the resulting is Scarlet just shoving down this mid lane.
I always find it really funny just to see someone walk into lane and smite a minion. It's just like, no, you're not. This one's gone. Take this one away. For the time
now
being.
War are being pulled between mid lane and top lane, and Larssen is like the guy that is trying to flitter between two lanes. Looks like they're going to try and put pressure onto Scarlet, but Dan, I mean, this looks pretty grim for these tier 1 towers in mid and top for War, because Larssen is the one that has got the majority of the wave clear here. No one else can really do that job.
Scarlet was on a ward there, as was 7 Army. We do see Woolight coming into the mid lane here, and Dandan's actually setting up a freeze in this top lane, so he is going to get free farm for the next while. Nunu getting chased on. Larssen there. Stand United used onto Dan. Scarlet chased underneath the tower, will survive for the time being, but now with 5 members mid, War can just look for that mid lane tower as well.
Good way to punish the freeze from Dandan is putting pressure on the map, resulting in Dandan either having to come and rotate.
He's got ult.
Does he have his ultimate? It looks like it's still on cooldown.
Oh, no, he hasn't. Yeah.
No, it's still on cooldown. The only way that Gangplank can respond to these kind of map pressures is either by teleporting in, which at this stage of the game, he doesn't even have Triforce, so doesn't want to do that, or use his ultimate to clear waves. Already used his ultimate to clear wave at this point in time, and you can see it's actually forced him to unfreeze to start generating some pressure in that side lane, so that if you freeze a side lane and then the rest of the enemy team then rotates as a 5, you aren't generating any pressure in the side lane that you're split pushing in, so they're not even worried about that lane, so they can quite freely make things happen in the other 2 lanes, and that's what you saw War trying to achieve there. Didn't get a pick to make it happen, but it was the strategy that they attempted to use.
Did use the Stand United as well. JWoww's building up towards a Titanic Hydra. Dandan on his way, as we said, towards that Trinity Force. Skarlet just completed his Rod of Ages, so now has that stacking up alongside the tier. Double stacking build, as we tend to see out of Cassios. And with a even gold score, 12 minutes in, Skarlet's looking for a chase up towards the top, but Woolite will just ambush his way away. Dan is on his way up. That's going to confuse me a few times throughout this series, I'm sure. Woolite looking for the engage. Skarlet chased off with the Ice Blast. There's the Cannon Barrage. And that dissuades
super risky, because all Skarlet needed to have was ultimate available to turn around and blast Woolite, and then he was dead. They were either they timed this, or they were very lucky that Cassiopeia didn't have her ultimate available. And I don't know how many people do. I don't know how many timers you can keep track of, but I assume they did keep track of the Cassiopeia ultimate. But regardless, it's very risky to make that kind of play.
Still a 20 CS lead as well for Neon as he sits in this middle lane. Looks like he's going Blade of the Ruin King. War will try and control the Rift Herald. Do have the Nunu Smite Consume combo, of course, very powerful at controlling objectives. But they're spotted out by a ward from Skarlet, and it will just distract them for the time being. OG, after what appeared to be a bad bottom lane early, War kind of let them get away with it and said we'll switch away, and it's cost them a little bit as we get towards the mid portion of the game.
Are clearing waves here quite nicely, but they've transitioned Cassiopeia into a side lane, trying to shove in. Larssen has been struggling in the 1v1, although he is now ahead in CS. They have been shoveling farm onto Larssen on this Corki here, who's now picked up the Hex Drinker, pretty important for his survival versus Cassiopeia. But like I said, OG are going to be pretty happy to scale here. They've got 3 scaling carries in the form of Kog'Maw, Cassiopeia, and Gangplank. Harder to pull off the composition, but stronger individual carries when it comes to these kind of teamfight situations, where you're relying on both basically Woolite and Larssen for the majority of teamfight damage for War as the game progresses.
They do have a strong mid spike, though. When you get 2 items on the Twitch, you get Trinity Force on Larssen completed. He's delayed that by going Hex Drinker, but still around the 20-minute mark will be putting out a lot of damage. He seems to be behind where he'd like to be. When we see Corkis really dominate that mid lane, their Trinity Force is about the 17-18 minute mark. I think it's going to be about 20 minutes here. It has delayed it, of course, with the Hex Drinker. Went for the fully completed Sorcerer's Shoes. War will be able to get themselves that Rift Herald, and that will be a tower in the mid lane, you would have to assume. Yeah, although it's almost down anyway.
I mean, they might want to use it in the mid lane to guarantee push through the Cassiopeia wave clear, but also there's a couple of basic attacks going down right now, so if they can get an opportunity to take that down and use Rift Herald somewhere else, they might do that. But I feel like it's just an easy shove with Rift Herald onto this mid lane tier 1, especially to get through that Cassiopeia wave clear, which is so strong at this point.
You don't even need to be with the Herald to do it. As long as there's not a minion wave there, it will just run its way down towards the tower. And I think that's what Dan is setting up for here. Perhaps waiting for this next wave to make sure.
Yeah, they'll clear the minion wave and then summon Harriet.
Harriet the Herald. Larssen comes across with the Valkyrie.
If they even need to.
Yeah, I'm not sure they need to with Larssen coming across. A couple of auto attacks, as you say, from Woolite will help them secure this tower. Mid falls 3 towers to 1 in favor of War. About a 500 gold lead for them. It's not monumental, but it's a little bit early on. And they can even go for the Cloud Drake as well if they so desire.
Looks like that's what they're going to do. Off the back of their Infernal Drake early on. Are you just going to stick Rift Herald in the side lane then? Are you just going to shove that in with Shen and put pressure on a tier 2? You don't really have it. You might group up and try and push the tier 2 in the mid lane with that Rift Herald. That might be an opportunity. But there's no real easy targets for that Rift Herald now as Larssen gets caught out. Might just be able to get away.
Oh, the chase from 7 Army here going very deep. Another member we haven't talked about too much. We'll get the blast gun away. Flash hook from AOD doesn't connect. 7 Army actually flashed away from it himself.
I like that OG have moved into a 1-3-1, by the way. because it forces Larssen out of areas where he can siege effectively with the team, forces Larssen out of the team fight areas, which is where obviously Corki gets a lot of work done, forces him away from wave clearing in the mid as well. So many good ways of drawing Larssen to a side lane where right now OG's priority seems to be getting some shove onto that mid lane tier 1, and by having Skarlet in a side lane, it necessitates having Larssen there to respond. And that's really good for OG because the Larssen is the only, I guess, consistent form of wave clear here for War, which means basically free turret in the mid now.
Dandan's been brought up as well just to make sure they secure it. Won't be too difficult for them. A couple of autos, and once again the game sits in a very even state. Both these teams, of course, challenging for that 4th spot in the league, looking for that playoff position. It's going to be hard for OG as well because they face up against Team RB next week, whereas War take on PSG, the bottom place team in the league for the time being. So OG will really want to secure this win to guarantee themselves that spot in the playoffs.
Don't wait to see things scale up. The Trinity Force has been finished for Dandan now. We are working towards what I think looks like to be a Morellonomicon for Skarlet. Looks like that's where she's going with it. Yeah. So some item spikes are soon to be hit here for OG that they can use. And by going in this 1-3-1 again, you are pulling apart what War want to achieve. War have got a very team fight orientated composition here. Nunu, Twitch. Great combination in the team fight. Larssen able to get a lot of work done with these missiles as the game progresses even before team fights take place. So by splitting up, here we go. We're going to go siege with Rift Herald on this tier 2 in the mid lane. Finally going to use it. Wave clear not in position. Skarlet coming through.
Neon's there, and they actually clear the entire wave. We're like hooked, cocooned upside in that front line, and it will get half the damage on towards the tower and then get chunked away by OG.
These are the kind of moves that you need to make as Wind and Rain to actually force OG out of these sort of the comfort areas that they've found themselves in. Their comfortable areas are just literally sitting in the side lanes, trying to force 1v1 matchups that they feel that they have advantages in. Skarlet trying to go in on Larssen here.
Larssen will struggle. The grounding from that miasma is actually very powerful from Skarlet because it stops the Valkyrie away, means that Larssen has to trade for a little bit longer than he would like to. And now that top tower is definitely a priority for Origen, looking for the final tier 1. Meanwhile, War have accepted that, and they're going to play across to the other side of the map and try and get some damage down onto this tier 2 in the bottom lane. Pretty difficult, although JWoww does have the Titanic Hydra, and Dan, of course, with the Blood Boil to try and speed up those autos. AOD lands the hook onto Illusionist. There's the Glacial Fissure down, but Illusionist getting absolutely chunked. The heal comes out. Will he die to the Ignite? Yes, he will. A kill for the Twitch. Larssen and AOD managing to escape, as does Woolite. They lose the tower, the tier 2. In that bottom lane, and Skarlet able to get a tier 1 of his own up towards the top side.
I love the prioritization of the Titanic Hydra first by JWoww over anything, because it allows him to shove consistently into Dandan. And Dan, just singular Dan, coming in on this Nunu, blood boiling literally probably anybody in a lane is going to help you shove down turrets so quickly. So this is JWoww saying, okay, I'm prioritizing my ability, especially before Dandan scales up on the gangplank, to shove waves in, put pressure in a side lane split push scenario. Also, love the fact that War are basically ignoring Cassiopeia. They're saying, okay, we don't actually do well in a side lane versus Cassiopeia. Our advantages lie when we're looking to make plays and siege under towers and rotating with Dan on this Nunu. We don't want to give much to Skarlet here, because Skarlet not going to build a build that's going to shove towers super quickly like you would see on a LeBlanc with a Hextech Gunblade or a Lich Bane. So they're happy just to kind of let Skarlet shove in the side lane and say, okay, without Skarlet there, they actually lose when they're disengages. You know, you don't have the ability to just Cassiopeia ultimate and walk away. So we can look to make plays in mid and bot lane and leave Skarlet up there on that Cassiopeia to do her own thing. And then when she finally shoves to a turret, Larssen can then just move back and just clear the wave and be happy and reset.
War are very good at taking objectives, however, and you can see they realize that they're going to set up vision around the Baron. There's a few wards there for OG. But if they wanted to, they could go for it with the Nunu, with the Blood Boil. The Corki and the Twitch there as well, of course. Trinity Force has been completed onto Larssen. Neon suddenly got a lot of harass down with that Blade of the Ruined King and Bioarcane Barrage.
Without Skarlet to defend the mainstay of the Origen composition, the wave clear is kind of shaky. You either need to bring Dandan in or Skarlet in to clear these waves in the mid lane. Other than that, OG are really struggling in this 3 versus 3, and the quick rotations that the Wind and Rain are making around OG right now.
They're looking for the engage onto Neon. Flash play onto Illusionist. That's a huge play as they're going to get the kill onto Neon. Cannot stress enough what AOD did there. That was absolutely massive. Absolute Zero comes out from Dan as Woolite was getting harassed down, but AOD with the hero plays on that Thresh made that all possible.
Brilliant way to force them out of the 1v1 is by forcing these fights, and Twitch Submarine mode is something that we've seen so much over the last few years in League of Legends. Delivery of that Shen. Skarlet has come into the fray now, and this makes it a lot stronger for OG.
AOD is dead as Skarlet pushes forward, looking for the Noxious Blast, can't quite land it. Illusionist with the Winter's Bite. Just coming back to why I say that was such a play from AOD, he flash plays onto Illusionist to stop him getting the Unbreakable Shield open, and that's why they can get onto Neon and actually just totally isolate him from the fight.
And it was a good follow-up by JWoww as well, and great positioning from Woolite. I think OG now need to rethink. I think Skarlet suddenly needs to be saying, okay, I might not actually be better off in the side lane. I'm probably better off with my team in the mid lane here. I don't have teleport, I can't respond to these fights very quickly, and Skarlet is a massive driving force behind OG's team fight capability. If you take Skarlet out of the picture, War will literally run over them. Skarlet, I feel, is a major, major impact source for OG, and she's currently sat split pushing, which she's not getting a lot of work done in. I think she needs to come back, or he needs to come back on this Cassiopeia, clear waves under the mid lane tier 2, and be there for when War try and force these fights, because War will try and force these fights. This is how you play with a Twitch as you get these item spikes up. You basically stick Blood Boil on him, look for him to stealth in and get a ridiculous ultimate off and try and blow someone down.
As much as we say that, because Skarlet wasn't in the fight, War all-in on Neon and then overextended, allowing Skarlet to get the counter kill. It ended up being a relatively even trade. You know, they get Mountain Drake off it, they get a kill onto AOD, and the gold is still pretty much even between these two teams.
If OG positioned correctly, though, this is exactly the conundrum that myself and Frozen Dawn talked about before we went into the game, which is if you have a Cassiopeia and a Kog'Maw, you can only focus one of them. They either have to line up like Skittles for you to bowl them over with the Twitch ultimate, or you focus one of them, and both of them are incredibly powerful in late-game team fights. Skarlet will shove that side lane out, but again, I don't want to see her drawn to that side lane too much. Cassiopeia is a great 1v1, but it's hard to lock down a Corki as Cassiopeia, because there was always that Valkyrie that will just get you out of pretty much any sticky situation. Her real strengths, I feel, lie in preventing and re-engaging and counter-engaging. That's what Cassiopeia, in my opinion, is really good at doing, is finding those counter-engages, and that's what I want to see Skarlet come into the OG lineup to do.
Woolite once again looking to step forward, does get a ward down. Will be cleared straight away by OG. JWoww is splitting here, does have the TP, Stand United off cooldown as well.
Dan will have to go back.
That's what he's going to do. He's got a teleport of his own, though, if he wants to join it up. He's gone Death's Dance Trinity Force. Looking at item spikes across the board, that Morellonomicon for Skarlet has been completed alongside what you would assume is a Seraph's Embrace next. Larsen's got his Trinity Force and actually building up towards a Static Shiv or a Rapid Fire Cannon afterwards.
Usually you see Cookies go Rapid Fire, but you've already got the wave cleared, because Static Shiv's great as the Energizer build, but often people build it as a bit of extra wave clear on the AD carry. Corki's got like that in bounds, so you don't need any much more extra. And Rapid Fire Cannon gives you the extra range on a basic attack that can really hit hard on that first hit. So
at the moment, I actually think War is struggling a little bit into OG. As much as they're continuing just to push out the top wave, they are going to look towards this Baron now and can.
I don't even think OG have seen or able to respond to this.
Control wards.
And at the back end, this is just going to be a free Baron.
Like, I don't think they realize this is going on.
They don't, because they're back in.
Heal used to keep Dan alive for the time being, that's a Baron. And eventually OG will recognize it and say, oh.
I mean, okay, well, you saw none of the War roster on the map. Like, where else are they going to be other than either at base or doing Baron?
Dano's going to chase onto JWoww here, does put the Spirit's Refuge down. A barrel after barrel, there's the parlay as well as JWoww's just going to Stand United his way out of this one. Dan has no way of stopping that.
There's no way of stopping a Stand United like that, just because literally, like you said, no CC on Gangplank and can't interrupt the channel there.
I'm interested that he used Stand United rather than teleport. It is on a shorter cooldown, but you can't join the fight as readily as you can with Stand United. So if they were looking for a play soon,
Twitch,
I would have teleported away and then used the Stand United. But the shorter cooldown perhaps makes up for it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the game, you can already see it's now coming up to a quarter on cooldown. I think even before the next team fight breaks out, that should be up. So he's got no worries about using it just to get out of that kind of situation. But I think OG are starting to struggle here.
Well, against the Baron, you're definitely going to start to struggle a little bit, aren't you?
Again, like, you now have to defend against the siege, and Skarlet is going to be forced to... I mean, Skarlet should, realistically, be forced to come to this mid lane, but Dan is the one that's doing it right now because he knows he's got a little bit of leeway in that bot lane with a tier 2 already being taken. Skarlet now drawn to defend against this top lane tier 2 as Dan moves down towards the bot lane. Big opportunity for War to just push onto this inhibitor turret.
Warlock just looking for that attack speed. We'll get the Lantern away as Neon trades back into him. Half of Warlock's health just gone in an instant. That is what a Kog'Maw can do.
Absolutely.
And War do need to be a little bit cautious. The Cocoon is going to land onto JWoww. 7 Army has been very silent throughout this game, although both teams really haven't been making incredibly proactive plays. It's kind of like the only proactive play I can think of is that Baron, really, decided to go for that. Apart from that, 3-1, 27 minutes in. I was expecting a little bit more of a circus in this game. I was expecting a little bit more action.
It's been clean.
Neon's dead.
Neon's dead. That is the power of a Twitch. Can just surprise you and blow you up in a matter of seconds. And there's another hook there.
Onto 7 Army. Neon actually didn't even use... Neon used Flash and Heal, but Warlock didn't have to use anything. Just used that ultimate, and that's the tower going down. And War, the ones on the front foot with that Baron, can look to get their first inhibitor.
That's why the wave clear of Gangplank can be very difficult to make work. You can just lose your barrel before you even clear the wave. And that's why you need the Cassiopeia there. The major issue I feel like OG have had, is something we've talked about, is that they were so determined to find a 1v1 with Skarlet and Larssen in the side lane, drawing Larssen. And actually it made a lot of sense early on, because you drew Larssen away from the wave clear areas that the rest of OG could capitalize on. But as the game progressed, it became more and more clear that it wasn't working for them. And that Skarlet had huge impacts in teamfights, and they should have been realizing that War have been looking to set up Twitch initiations, JWoww initiations, all those kind of things. And I think Skarlet needed to be there for those, but Skarlet hasn't been there for those. It's not a huge gold advantage, though, even as it stands, only 5,000.
It's about a 5,000 swing since the Baron.
Yeah.
So it is it's accelerated quite a bit since that Baron got taken down. There's still about a 10th or so, maybe an 8th of that Baron left, so perhaps they'll look to push in one more inhibitor tower. Warlock goes forward, Flash hook doesn't land.
Close.
Just about. Actually, Warlock flashing across the side, trying to get onto Neon, but couldn't bend the bullet enough, and now OG can look to re-engage. 5v4, War, tail between their legs, run away, perhaps look for that Mountain Drake.
Unsure why you would flash a Twitch at the tower.
He was trying to get around the corner.
Okay.
Trying to bend the bullet.
He's trying to speed run the Summoner's Rift.
Exactly. He saw Summer Games done quick, and he was like, I saw this in Dark Souls, guys. There's a wall clip here, and if I get it, the Nexus actually just explodes and I win the game.
Another Mountain Drake. They actually just trolled JWoww by sending him back over the wall. But another Drake picked up, and this time Mountain means when they do get those opportunities to hit tower, they will be doing that much more damage as well. It also means that the next Baron will be very quickly shredded by the Wind and Rain composition.
But they go down to 3,000 now because a couple of kills come out for OG, and they do have this scaling comp. We talked about it. You've got Seraphs completed. Dan sitting on 2.5 completed items. Kog'Maw, Neon there as well. If he doesn't get killed early on, he's almost got his Ginsus. He is in a strong position as a Kog'Maw, even if his scoreline doesn't seem to be that beneficial.
No real engage for these teams either right now. A lot of it is going to come down to these Baron power plays, which was mainly capitalized on by War. Huge capitalization by War. And the rotation of your wave clear. I think so important about dealing with waves effectively for OG, which they haven't been doing with very effectively throughout this game. But you do have that potential of the engage with the Thresh Hook for War. You do have the backup of the Shen ultimate. You know, even if there is a catch, Shen ultimate can bail people out in the late game. Woolite can make those submarine Shen plays. Maybe not as hard as he tried to make that play into the bot lane in the tower.
Man. Just go all in.
But, I mean, I understood what he was trying to do. He was like, I'm trying to blow up Neon here, right? But he did flash into the middle of a Gangplank ultimate.
I think it was just overly aggressive because the hook had only just missed.
Yeah.
They knew Neon didn't have flash or heal.
It's those classic hyphy plays.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I can do this, I'm Twitch, guys. One shot him. Avarice Blade doesn't exist anymore. You can't do that. What was it actually? Sword of, what was the item?
Sword of the Divine?
Sword of the Divine. Sword of the Occult and Sword of the Divine. They both existed. Sword of the Divine gave you...
Sword of the Divine 3 guaranteed critical strikes?
Yes, it was. And Sword of the Occult was like the Leviathan. It scaled the more kills you got. It was the Medjais of AD.
Yeah, I remember that. But Sword of the Divine was the guaranteed 3 critical. The Twitch is actually used to build.
Here comes the Cannon Barrage. Dan has to flash away as JWoww. Oh, there's enough damage.
Which JWoww didn't need to flash. Wait, who actually flashed?
JWoww gets the kill. JWoww gets the kill. No one flashed for that. apart from Dan who flashed away. And that will be the inhibitor tower going down as well as War look to close out this game. 31 minutes in. They're looking for their second inhibitor of the match, and OG just have no response. This could be that final nail in their coffin, just waiting for those Nexus towers to fall. Woolite actually slightly out of position there, will get lanterned across the wall.
We did talk about how hard this OG composition was to pull off. Like, really, really hard to pull off properly. To force team fights where Skarlet and Neon were able to sit free in the backline, untouched by Twitch because someone else is being focused. There's no front line for OG as well. That's another really important point. When you've got no front line versus Twitch, there's no one that can soak damage, no one that can be a distraction. Everybody on this OG lineup gets destroyed by a Twitch ultimate. So everything, apart from Braum maybe, everything is a good target for Twitch here.
But that's why it's so important that Illusionist positions correctly.
Yeah.
And it's so important that War get him out of position.
And again, maybe it's the restraints of Dan. Maybe Dan doesn't like playing tanks, and therefore that maybe restrains what OG can perform like in terms of compositions. I actually genuinely would have preferred a Fiora pick here instead of the Gangplank personally.
Seven Army takes some damage. Glacial Fissure will come down as Illusionist steps forward. Skarlet there as well, but Illusionist just gets shredded by Larssen. So does Skarlet. Double kill to War. And they can hear the drums of victory already. They're going to go on towards Dan as well. Almost gets the kill onto Dan. Cannon Barrage into the heel. The hook lands onto Seven Army. That's another one for Woolite. 3-1-5 on this Twitch. And you have to think there's no way OG defend against a 5-man stack from War.
They push onto this mid lane. Inhibitor, big wave shoving in. So much time for the respawns on OG. This should be the first game going over to War very convincingly as well. A little bit in the early game where it could have gone either way. Some lots and lots and lots of swaps in the early game that we potentially...
flashes in, gets the kill onto Neon. Sand United comes out as well just to finish off the deal. 9 kills to 2. It's going to be War. They'll go 1-0 up over Origin.
I think most of us thought this would be the outcome at the end of this game. By the way, Corki did go static Shiv. Just